Well, big breaking news coming in. Election Commission of India has filed an affidavit in the top court in its response over the plea that was filed seeking a stay on electoral bonds as a way for political parties to raise funds. And the Election Commission has reiterated what we have been telling you has been its stand from day one. And the Election Commission in this affidavit, in fact, goes on to say that electoral bonds will not help in curbing black money, will not help in bringing about transparency. But Meenakshi has accessed this affidavit for us. So let's go across to her for more details. Meenakshi, can you take us through the highlights of what the poll panel has to tell the top court?
Well, that's right, Tanvi. This is a 34-page affidavit that has been filed in the Supreme Court just a short while back. Remember, the matter comes up for hearing next on the 2nd of April. But why this affidavit is so important is because we are seeing the premier quasi-judicial body, which is the Election Commission of India, taking a stand this time around pertaining to electoral bonds and also highlighting before the Supreme Court as to how consistently the Election Commission has sought for transparency from political parties. That has not come by. Election Commission has made repeated pleadings by way of letters to various political parties to ensure greater transparency. And in a nutshell, Tanvi, the Election Commission of India is essentially taking the stand before the Supreme Court that electoral bonds and removal of cap on corporate funding would have serious impact on transparency in funding of political parties. So that's the stand the Election Commission is taking, which is a very interesting position. And also the timing part of it is so interesting because remember, we are all looking to head into Lok Sabha 2019, which is all set to begin very soon. And it's a quite detailed affidavit, Tanvi. As a matter of fact, this is the affidavit that we are talking about here, which we are in possession of. And categorically, the Election Commission is citing the terms and conditions under which it has been compelled to take this position. It is going on to also annex the letters that it has written to various political parties about the need for greater transparency and making the source of their funding subject matter of public scrutiny. So clearly, this is a position which will dwell very significantly in the mind of the apex court, Tanvi, when the Supreme Court takes stock of the situation again on the 2nd of April. But for now, the big news breaking is this 34-page affidavit filed by the Election Commission of India pertaining to electoral bonds in the Supreme Court, where the Election Commission of India is clearly taking a position which is saying that electoral bonds and other such schemes is something which proves to be detrimental in the interest of transparency insofar as funding of political parties is concerned.
Yes, Meenakshi, in fact, it goes into great details of all the steps that the Election Commission has been taking in the recent times to ensure that there is more transparency, that the political parties give Election Commission, updated records, their accounts, so that deeper scrutiny can be done. And there is a significant part of this affidavit, as I'm also going through it right now, that speaks about how anonymous donations are not good for the system, which is why Election Commission has even reduced that cap from 20,000 to 2,000 in cash. So obviously that's another point to show that if you are anonymously donating, even when it comes via electoral bonds, that should not be all right, because then at the end of the day, neither the Election Commission nor the citizen will know who is donating to these political parties.
Well, that's right, Tanvi. We are seeing massive expenses which the political parties are indulging in pertaining to these rallies. Remember, one rally of some premier political parties in India costs around 20 crores. That is the kind of money that is involved in present-day elections. And these Lok Sabha elections, of course, are very, very high stake. So it is not about A or B political parties. It is about the premier political parties of India, which are really getting funds of this nature, which often times the source of the funding is not known. There are several interests with which people provide funds to political parties. And in India, the premier political parties, one rally approximate cost, Tanvi last evaluated, was a sum total of 20 crores. And therefore, the time is opportune for a crackdown or some kind of a guideline to bring greater transparency. And the most significant thing here is this, Tanvi, that this is a quasi-judicial body that we're talking about, the Election Commission of India. And the position that it takes assumes a lot of import going forward in the Supreme Court of India.
Yes, and often when we have debates about code of conduct and the reforms in elections and electoral reforms, the BJP turns around and tells us, well, why are you questioning what the Election Commission is doing? You should have faith in the Election Commission. And if that is the benchmark that the BJP wants to hold, then perhaps the government needs to relook at its policy and the kind of changes it has brought in to enable these electoral bonds. Sanjay Jha is on the phone line. Mr. Jha, as we go through the details of this 39-page affidavit that's been filed by the Election Commission, one thing that is very clear is that the Election Commission has indeed confirmed and again mentioned the letter that was sent to Law Commission in May 2017 by Election Commission that said that electoral bonds are a step away from transparency and will not help curb black money. Do you think this method for fundraising should be put on a pause?
Oh, well, Tanvi, let me tell you, I mean, we have debates on corruption in our country. Principal source of corruption in our country is the way you finance campaigns, basically political funding. Now, it's shocking. It's shocking that the government of Mr. Modi actually comes up with electoral bonds. Electoral bonds is actually a method by which you can channelize black money into the system. I mean, what is the reality? The reality is that people who make donations to political parties, their basic status will be kept anonymous. Why? Don't you, as an anchor of a popular TV channel, aren't the viewers of your channel having a legitimate right to ask who funds the Congress or the BJP or any third or fourth party? But this government says, no, you don't have to know it. Let's keep it opaque. And by the way, they have removed the cap in terms of how much of a company's, contribution can be made. There was a cap of 7.5%, I think, of the profit. Now that cap has been removed. Today, shell companies can make investments of unlimited amounts. So basically, you're talking about institutionalizing corruption. And is it any surprise, Tanvi, that 95% of the electoral bond money has gone to only political party, which is the BJP. And therefore, the BJP is mopping up resources. At this moment of time, as you and I have a conversation, the Election Commission has probably realized that this is a dangerous game. Because what it is going to create is that in this election, every election in a democracy is critical. But if one political party has access to corporate money, maybe most of it is illegal. And number two, if that is able to sway public opinion, because, they can buy all the inventory on media and, various other billboards, etc., it can sway public opinion. These are very vital issues.
Correct. Let me bring in Anila Singh of the BJP. Anila Singh, if the Election Commission believes that this is not a step towards transparency in political funding, and while they're trying to make political parties accountable, election donations do not help, then why is your party and government still insistent on going forward with this tool for poll funds?
Matter is sub judice. Supreme Court has to give the verdict, and we should wait till Supreme Court give its judgment. I think so. It will be too early to comment on that.
But it will be too late if we wait for the Supreme Court to decide on it. The fact of the matter is that what your government has done hasn't even got the approval, and a red flag has been raised by the Election Commission as early as May 2017. And for almost 2 years, you've ignored effectively what the Election Commission was telling you on this.
I'll stick to my statement by saying that I am not to comment, and Supreme Court has to give its verdict, and whatever verdict be out, I think so all the political parties has to agree to it, and I think Bharatiya Janata Party will also do the same. But before that, commenting on it won't be right.
All right, Anila Singh, I understand your position, so thank you for giving us at least that response. Let me also bring in Professor Triloshan Shastri of the Association for Democratic Reforms. And Professor Shastri, this we have known and we have spoken about it often of how Election Commission also had issues with electoral bonds. They have now filed a detailed affidavit. Are you hopeful that perhaps this will help in getting a stay on electoral bonds from the Supreme Court?
We are very hopeful, and we are so happy that the Election Commission has taken this stand. Our faith in the institutions of Indian democracy have been considerably strengthened. Not only the Election Commission, but all the civil society organizations, voters around the country, and large sections of the media have been saying the same thing. So we would like to congratulate the Election Commission for doing the right thing. And we are extremely hopeful that...
If you can also explain to our viewers, Professor Shastri, why do you think that electoral bonds as a concept and a product is not good for transparency in our elections?
See, the electoral bonds are actually reducing transparency because the voter would not be able to know who is funding whom. Second problem is that the cap on funding from a company has been removed. Earlier, a company could only donate perhaps as much as 7.5% of its net profits. The funding from companies to political parties is 100% tax exempt. So there are instances of companies which are shell companies which raise large amounts of money, tens, hundreds, thousands of crores, which are basically laundering of white money, black money into white money. And this money which they collect, they will donate to a political party, and the public will not even know who is donating it through electoral bonds. But the government in power will know who is funding it. So this is kind of going against the spirit. And when we talk about international benchmarks, all countries have 100% transparency, the ones that we look up to, the Western democracies, the United States, Europe, Japan, etc., etc. We should follow their example and use the best international standards on transparency. So that's the reason why our voters have to be very careful and understand this the problem that the electoral bonds is creating.
I also want to highlight this part now, while this has to do more with transparency, but what the Election Commission has said is that all political parties, regional or national, are expected to observe transparency as well as accountability with respect to the funds that are being raised as well as the expenditure that is being incurred by them. And in fact, there are several pages in this affidavit that speak and emphasize about transparency and the need for political parties to maintain clear records that are then shared with the Election Commission. But when it comes to electoral bonds, Mr. Shastri, to what extent is even the Election Commission being given information, or are they also in the dark?
The Election Commission would also be in the dark after the electoral bonds. And we totally support what the Election Commission has said in its affidavit. From the ADR side, since 2006, now it is 12 years, we have been fighting for greater transparency. We had got greater transparency when the Central Information Commission ruled that the entire sources of income and the audited financial statements of political parties would be in the public domain, and that they would be declared as public authorities under the right to information. It is after this that they have come up with the electoral bonds. What are they trying to hide? That is the main question. What are the political parties trying to hide? It's a big problem. I don't want to talk on a well-known channel about the kind of private rumors that one keeps hearing from very credible sources. But the amount of money that is being poured into the system for this election is mind-boggling. It's bad for democracy.
Absolutely. And one has to keep in mind also the fact in this case that the government in the budget a year and a half ago removed the cap on corporate donations. So up till then, the corporates could only give up to 7% of their profits as donations to political parties. That cap has been removed. So not only can you donate anonymously, but there is no limit to how much money you can give to a political party. And that's actually what adds to the concerns. Apart from the fact, like one of our other panelists was saying, that you can now start creating these shell companies, routing money from foreign, because foreign funding is also now allowed in our elections, unlike the rules we have for our NGOs, we don't have such rules for a political party. So you can have all this foreign fund coming in via various companies, all anonymously done. And you and I as a voter will never know who is funding our Neta. Let me see if I can go back to Meenakshi. Professor Shastri, thank you for joining us and sharing your views on it. Of course, ADR has been at the forefront of this fight against electoral bonds since the day it was announced. And Mira now has been bringing you all of those details and findings as well. Now, Meenakshi, what happens next? What can we expect in the Supreme Court next?
Well, interesting question that, Tanvi. The matter is slated for hearing on the 2nd of April. And as we have been emphasizing, that the position of the Election Commission is significant, because this is the premier nodal poll body which is entrusted with the task of not just conducting elections across the spectrum and the democratic landscape of this country, but also entrusted with the task of seeing that the rules and the regulations are abided by various parties. Of course, we have seen the exasperation of the Election Commission as well, which is to some extent highlighted by way of this affidavit as well, because the Election Commission is also citing as to how on numerous occasions it has made a reference by way of a written communication to various political parties. Not just that, in this particular affidavit, in the last part, which is para 13.1 onwards, Tanvi, the Election Commission is going on to cite the recommendations which the Law Commission has also made from time to time. So clearly, things seem to be coming to a head. They seem to be falling on deaf ears. And ultimately, again, it has fallen on the shoulders of the Supreme Court to adjudicate on an issue which the lawmakers themselves should have been more introspective about. That is not happening. So therefore, we cannot prejudge, or we at Mirana will not hazard a guess on what the prospective orders of the Supreme Court can be. But surely, we can tell our viewers that the position that the Election Commission has taken is going to weigh very, very significantly on the minds of the top court as it goes on to adjudicate further on this issue on the 2nd of April.
All right. In fact, that is the affidavit that Mirror now has accessed. We're just showing those visuals to our viewers, and this is what Meenakshi has got for us, a 39-page affidavit. A lot of it emphasizes on transparency, the need for transparency in election funding. And there is then one part that says that in May 2017, we had written letters. The copy of those letters, Meenakshi, have also been attached in this affidavit that shows where Election Commission very clearly said that we don't think this is going to help bring transparency. It goes a step away from transparency, and that it will be very difficult to curb black money because you are literally opening it up to shell companies. Meenakshi, of course, the government is also a party in this case. And what has been the government stand so far in the case?
Well, yes, Tanvi, the government will now articulate a position on this one, because remember, the Election Commission is a significant body and its opinion on an affidavit will assume a lot of import, and there are other parties also, which includes the Government of India, and therefore this assumes a lot of import, because clearly on occasions we have seen the Election Commission and the Supreme Court have differing positions, like we did in the instance of VVPAT matching and the EVM. But on this issue, with the Election Commission digging its heels deep before the Supreme Court, as a matter of fact, enumerating the past case history and the antecedents of its efforts taken to safeguard, ensure and call for greater transparency in the electoral system in India, it will be hugely interesting which way the government will take a position on this. And despite that, really, the proceedings, the observations of the Supreme Court will offer deeper insight into how the court is really processing this entire issue. But this affidavit, 34 pages in total, Tanvi, will prove to be critical going forward on this one.
All right, Meenakshi, thanks so much for bringing us this big story. Mirror now has been at the forefront of this campaign against electoral bonds. And time and again, we've told our viewers how it goes against transparency when you and I as voters cannot know who is funding my neta, then that is not an open democracy and not an acceptable rule. The government on its part says it's transparent because the banks know where the money is coming from, and so the IT department will know where the money is coming from, and that's what matters. But if we tell you where the money is coming from, then you may think that the government is taking favors from these corporates, or you may have certain prejudices against these corporates, which is why anonymity of the corporate donors or any donors is important. That has been the government's stance so far.